one, it organically creates opportunity. And two, it creates the most difficult asset to acquire from other people, which in the currency that I believe is the most expensive to acquire, is trust.
This is BetterWealth with Caleb Guilliams. Hey, Joey, welcome to the show.
My man. What's up, Caleb? Thank you for having me.
I have to say, meeting you was so special to me. I want to just bring my audience in. I'm in Austin at a conference that I probably shouldn't be. I'm like the one kid in the room and a bunch of amazing entrepreneurs. And I remember sitting down and talking with you and getting your story, and faith is aligned. You're killing it in business. You're really winning. But the thing that really stood out about you to me is when you invited me to that mastermind. And it's funny, we're going to talk about scaling. We're going to talk about empathy. And you so beautifully had an event that brought people in where I met some amazing people that I'm doing business with, that future growth is going to happen. And that's all tied back to you. And so, Joey, it is a pleasure having you on, and I'm super pumped for the conversation that we're going to have.
Well, shoot, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, that was just where all the stars aligned, man. I think that meeting you the first day we were there, and then just finding out how much alignment. I think it was one of those things where we walked up to the buffet food line. We just happened to be next to each other, started talking, finding out we had all this stuff in common, especially from a faith perspective, just how we do business. And then we're both still in our 20s. Right. Might be a couple of years ahead, but not far.
Right.
And just realized that we were very aligned. And so, no, man, the pleasure was mine. We had a lot of fun, both at the event we were at and at the mastermind, and
playing ping pong.
Playing ping pong, because you're a baller at ping pong.
I have to say, my streak is still alive. There's multiple people that have played me on ping pong on the show, and I haven't lost yet. So if you're listening to this and you're good at ping pong, hit me up. I will lose to you.
He's the truth, because I was undefeated until I played him, and then he slapped me around a couple times, and I was like, all right, I am nowhere near. Sometimes it's good to have that, right? I need the humility, the ego. Right. Ego balloon pop.
So why don't you give the origin story, kind of give a little bit of background on who you are, what your business does, but then I really want to jump into this empathy driven, and you have an empathy driven sales because that's what your business is. But I really want to get deep as how can we take this principle and really master this idea of better wealth? Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Joey Gilkey, live in the humble city of Knoxville, Tennessee with my wife, my golden retriever. We are pregnant, so we are expecting here in August. So that's exciting. We'll be a family of 3.5 if you count a dog as a half.
I do not count a dog.
I don't either. Dude, I was super against it until I got her. Adeline is the dog's name. Now I'm pretty attached. So I told myself I'd never be a dog person. Now I am, unfortunately. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I own a few companies. Mainly, the main one that most people know me for is Tribe. Tribe, essentially, we help B2B companies land 6- and 7-figure deals, aka just elephant whale deals, if you will. And we do that with their dream clients. So we're targeting a very small percentage of their total addressable market. And we help them actually land those by being their outsourced sales agency, essentially. So we could dive a little more deep in that later, but that's in a nutshell who we are, 30,000 feet. I kind of got there by accident. So my career has almost entirely, 95% of it has been high ticket sales. Mm-hmm. So super high value products and services. I kind of had the opportunity to, when I started in my career, I was in full-time ministry actually. Left full-time ministry, and my first job was selling to Fortune 1000 companies. I was selling really high-ticket IT services and recruiting and HR products and services. Had a lot of luck there really fast. Got poached by a local so that company had 4,000 employees. It was a big corporation. I got poached by a small business to do risk management consulting and commercial insurance. Super sexy. Yeah. So I was on the property and casualty side doing risk management and selling commercial insurance policies on the back of that risk assessment and risk management consulting that we were doing. Did really well there. Took that company out as the only business development person there from 1 million ARR to 9.5 in about 18 months. So, and all this will weave in empathy-driven sales and how that was an impact on all that. But and the next job I took was a VP of sales job for a digital marketing agency. Now I say 95% high ticket sales because I eventually pretty much did the same thing there. I 4X'd their revenue in about 9 to 10 months and decided, well, I'm making this guy a lot of money. Let me go start my own digital marketing agency. And so I kind of got off the train of high ticket sales, except for I was still doing high ticket sales for my own company, but I was also trying to deliver these digital marketing services. So building out advertising funnels and that type of stuff. Realized I could sell it really easily and hated delivering it. And I was in a mastermind with other agency owners, realized that what I had was a gift, which was the ability to sell and sell these high stakes services, high value. And they loved delivering what they hated selling. And so I was like, well, let me just try this, and so started charging $500 a month, super low ticket to them just to kind of prove it out. Proved it out pretty quickly, landed some big deals for some of my friends who are agency owners. They said, hey, you should keep doing this. So I did, and out came Tribe Prospecting, which has since then been rebranded to Tribe. And now we charge $25,000 a month instead of $500.
Wow. And you guys are responsible for over $1.3 billion and counting of sales.
Yep. And new business ops. So we really dialed it in for the past 3 years. Just by the nature of how we do sales is fundamentally different. And so we're going for, while the rest of the market's going for high volume, low conversion. So they're targeting a lot of people, hoping for a 1% conversion on that massive outreach. We're going low volume, high conversion, hoping for much more. So higher conversion, not only as turning a prospect into a lead, but also turning a lead into a client. Right. Just by the nature of how the relationship starts.
And it's interesting, and this will be amazing because there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this. It's what's interesting to me is in the business world, we almost have, and I think it's because of this whole ClickFunnels movement or whatever, where it's like just throw spaghetti at the wall and you'll get a bunch of people, and then some people go down the funnel, and which is fine, but especially if you're in a business that has a higher ticket. Yep. I'm just thought your initial thoughts on the way that most people do marketing. And if you're listening to this, like, what is that nugget that you can give someone to say, wait, shift your thinking. And like, what if you did this one thing right?
Sure.
Like, how would that transform your business?
Yeah. So you're exactly right. And I actually always use ClickFunnels as an example. Poor ClickFunnels community. I don't speak too highly of them usually. There's a lot of great people in that community. It's just not my cup of tea. So you're exactly right. So most folks, again, it's high volume, low conversion. Their methodology is be extremely tactic centric, meaning pick your tactic you want to dump everything into. Say it's Facebook ads or it's LinkedIn automation or whatever it might be. And it's sprint, optimize, and hoping to go from 0.5% conversion to 1.5, which, would be a substantial increase, but that's not the type of business I care to run. Right. In the world of high ticket sales, and I explain high ticket sales as north of $10,000 per transaction. My company specializes in 6 figures and up transaction, but I would say this applies to anybody with, more than a couple grand. We're not selling a $49 SaaS product, And so in this world, I'm actually anti digital marketing. And I don't mean that from I differentiate brand from digital marketing. I think that brand is important. Like, I'm writing a book, that's marketing. I've got a podcast, that's marketing. We're creating content, that's marketing. But for me, I'm not trying to run people into a funnel and just see who pops at the bottom, right? Like, I personally believe if you want to have a dream business, you need to have dream clients, and dream clients don't come in through a funnel. Yeah. Dream clients come in through very strategic positioning and actually knowing exactly who your dream clients are, identifying them, and then creating strategy around that, in my opinion. So when I talk to people about shifting how they do marketing, I think the easiest way to say is stop going one-to-many and go one-to-one. Think about the actual target. We have a full process for this. It's 9 steps, but the first one is you have to define the persona. So what is the profile of your dream client? Don't stop at demographics, but think through psychographics. So pain points, goals, what's their average day look like? What type of content do they read? what are the actual consequences if they don't solve those pain points? If you can start aligning yourself with that dream client profile and then identifying the target accounts that fit that profile, and then take it a step further and splitting those up into small batches or cohorts. A lot of people do generic segmentation. So when I say segmentation, it's, let's say hypothetically, there's 10,000 people in my market I can sell to. You can segment that into 10 different segments of 1,000. Maybe it's geographic or it's revenue size. I believe in super small batch cohorts. Like I might only target 10 accounts.
Oh, wow.
Not 1,000. Yeah. I might only target 10 accounts.
But then you're like customizing each.
100% custom.
And I love that, man.
It does not scale. And we'll get into the book that I'm writing soon, but it does not scale. And I love the fact that it doesn't scale because most people won't do what we're willing to do. So I'll stop there, but that's the biggest advice is one-to-one.
I'm curious because we're building our whole marketing. And I think sometimes I get caught up in the tactics and say, okay, I want to drive people to a webinar and like something deep down inside of me, like knows that just doesn't sit right.
Sure.
Because the people that have come into our community that have been clients, like they love us, but it's like, how do you have more people get that epiphany? Because I want to scale. But totally. I don't necessarily want to scale. Like I don't care how we scale. I just want to do it the most effective way. So that's going to drive us into the empathy driven sales. And I want you to define that because I relate so much with that. Yep. But then also let's take it a step deeper and say, listen, one thing that we firmly believe in is that you are your greatest asset. It's like the number one investment you can make is in yourself. Yes. And like if you believe that to be true, how can you take this principle, regardless if you run your own business, you're investing, regardless, how do you take this empathy driven and take your life to the next level? But let's first define what empathy driven sales is.
Yep, exactly. So empathy driven sales, we'll start with the word empathy. I mean, we hear it thrown around a bunch. Gary Vee talks about it. It's somewhat of a buzzword, but I've always been a believer that buzzwords are buzzwords for a reason, right? Like they have actual meaning behind it. Some people just take the buzzwords and utilize them out of context. But if we think about empathy, I think about my wife, right? I would not have a solid relationship with my wife if I was not willing to place myself in her shoes, in her seat, to understand why she feels the way she feels, why she thinks the way she thinks, why she does the things she does. Because if a relationship is based entirely on me, I'm not willing to put myself in their position. My relationship's only built on the foundation of me.
Yep.
And so if I want a chance to be around 20, 30, 40 years from now with my wife, I need to be able to express empathy. And so empathy is it's that act of putting yourself in the position of the person across the table from you. And that could be, you could call it the market. So having empathy with your market, that just helps you just like overall positioning in the marketplace, if you can understand the market as a whole. Mm-hmm. But then it goes a layer deeper. It's empathy with the target accounts you want to go to. It's empathy with the decision, the key players in that account. And so with empathy driven sales, it's exactly what it sounds like. Like we are driven by trying to go as deep as we can into the individuals in the marketplace in which we want to work. So go ahead.
What's the difference between going through the niche target market and that a lot of marketers take you through? It's like you have to know who they're like. Some people go as far as to say like, what conversations are they having? What are they doing? Like, is it just a different way to say like, get really, really clear on your niche? Don't focus on the tactics. You have to understand the person, because if you truly understand the person, you're going to market and provide a product or a service in such a way that's truly going to serve them.
Yeah. So I think a lot of folks, when they think about, and that's a great question. A lot of folks, when they think about like, they call it ideal customer profiles or ICPs, right?
Yep.
I want to take that a step further as a dream client. So I think that dream clients oftentimes, and this is case by case, but what we find mostly with our clients is a dream client typically lives at the intersection of price, trust, and need. So price being, there's oftentimes, if you're to look at a bell curve cut in half, and this is gonna be hard to really tell the picture of it, but if you look at a bell curve, if you know what that is, cut in half, there is at the bottom of the bell curve where it's very skinny from the bottom. If you look at an X and a Y axis, along the bottom is very skinny, and then it ramps up and gets really, really high. If the vertical part of that is price and the horizontal part of that is percentage of the marketplace, usually the very, very top of the bell curve where it is essentially hitting its crest, there's about 1% of your market whom you can charge and who will pay an astronomical amount more than the other 99% of the market. It's between 1 and 5% usually. And so who are those 1%ers that, instead of paying you $3,000 for your service, will pay you $300,000 for your service? So price is one. The next is trust. Who are the types of folks who are going to trust your expertise? Most people, and I'm going to talk more in the digital marketing agency space, there's this thing called scope creep, which we've all probably heard of to some degree. Scope creep is where you agree on this thing, and the next thing you know, they try to, you give them an inch to take a mile. And next thing you know, you're losing money because you're doing more than you scoped out. Trust is they trust you to be the expert. So they let you do your best work, which also is in parallel with the third part, which is need. So do you actually solve in a big way some of their biggest pain points? And so if you can find those folks that live at that intersection, and that takes a lot of deep research and intelligence gathering, you will find your dream client. And so I usually break a market into 4 different categories. There's your total addressable market, which is, say there's a total of 10,000 people in your market. Then you have your commoditized market, the folks who will pay you to solve a problem, but they're not going to pay you very much, and they're going to be the biggest pain.
Yep.
Yeah, we all know those people.
I know those people.
Then you have your ideal market, which is kind of what everyone else is targeting, which is it's still a decent amount of volume, but it's usually ideal because they can pay you enough. They usually hit the price to some degree, but trust and need don't usually mark. And then there's the very small 1 to 5% of your market, which is your dream, what I would consider the dream market. And so that's really where we live, is trying to find out and do a lot of intelligence gathering on who are those folks that live within that. So back to your original question, and I don't want to get too winded here, but what most people are doing is they're finding the ideal market. So maybe out of 10,000, there's 1,000 in the ideal market. In the dream market, maybe there's 200. So in that 1,000, yes, they're trying to understand the types of personas, but they still want to attach automation to the outreach. So they still say, okay, there's 1,000 total people here. If we just segment these 1,000 into 5 different personas, so 200 per persona, if we can create enough context in our outreach, we can send automated email campaigns that are essentially really, they're tailored to that persona, but they're not tailored to that exact account, right?
Yep.
That is what 99% of organizations do. And that's still slightly more effective than just mass blast, spray and pray, but it's not 1-to-1. You're not going to get 30% conversion rates like we do.
Yes. But the pushback on that is, can you show that it's actually, you're making more money by doing that?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah,
so one of the phrases that I like to use is scale the unscalable. So we are actually unbelievably inefficient in certain areas because we personally bomb, we personally send videos to people that opt in, and we're not necessarily I need to talk to you offline about certain things that have come up.
Sure.
We need to do this. We need to do this. But you're making the statement, yes, the goal is to impact more people. I want 1 million people to be insured in the next 5 years. That's a crazy goal. How would you take this concept and actually, is it just starting with the 1 to 5% and then getting them and before you go on to your next group?
Right. Well, I think B2C is a little different. For one, I think you're not going to reach 1 million people necessarily through my approach, right? Okay. So the way that what people usually say is that doesn't scale.
Right.
And I say, damn right. And that's the way I want it. That's for me, because I think that you can scale in one of two, you can maybe call it 3 ways. One is through automation systems and processes. The other is through charging way more with systems and processes. And so what I used to charge $3,000 a month, I now have, it's a more robust service, but I've now solved a bigger pain point for a bigger type of company. And now I can charge $25,000 to $50,000 a month.
Totally.
So that's how I scale my revenue. And obviously my EBITDA, my multiple on my company is way better than when I was charging $3,000 a month.
Yeah, because it's easier it's fewer clients, i.e. fewer headaches that are paying you more.
Correct. So that's how I believe in scale. The other part, I guess you can call it is people, right? So you either have tools like automation tools and technology, which is what most people go because it's easier and cheaper. But I think it hurts in the long run because automations eventually break, and that causes headaches too. And you have to you can't charge nearly as much as you could if you were just doing manual custom work. It's just not how it works.
Right.
The other part is you hire people to do those unscalable things, and that's how you scale.
So let's unpack this idea of empathy and this concept of, regardless of like what the key takeaway in my opinion to this whole deal is, getting super clear in what you want.
Yes.
And then sometimes this is common. This is like a common example in the wealth space. Someone will say, I want to put my money in the market so I can get a better rate of return. Like their metric is rate of return, but you and I both know that you can't spend a rate of return, and that doesn't really tell you what you actually want. So what we do is we get clear on, okay, what do you actually want out of life? And then when you can clarify that, then it's a whole, like, we may put your money in the market, or there may be another idea or like avenue that you go down. We don't care necessarily the avenue if it's giving you the result. And what you're saying is, so many businesses, including mine, what I'm doing is we're focusing on the wrong things when we're doing marketing. Like we're saying we want one thing, impact, but yet we're doing it in a super inefficient and expensive way. And as a result, we're wanting to bang our head against the wall because the people that are calling in aren't not all ideal.
Sure.
Like, so I'm sure this is but I just want the person listening, like, this idea of empathy is maybe you need to be empathetic with yourself first.
Yeah. I think self-awareness is well, for one, I think you have to have self-awareness to be empathetic towards others, right?
Yes.
You cannot serve other people if you don't know how you can serve them, and you can't know how you can serve them if you don't know you, right? And what you can offer. But I do think, like applying this to yourself is the first thing we can do. And we kind of mentioned tactics earlier about how most people are tactic dependent. Like tactics, you have to do tactics to win, right? At the end of the day, you have to get your message in front of people in one way or the other. My belief is that if you know who you serve, the tactics don't necessarily matter over the long haul, because I want to have a sustainable company that's around for a long time. Like you said, you want to impact 1 million people. You're not going to do that in 1 or 2 years. That's going to take an investment over time, and you need to be sustainable to be long, for the ride that long. And so for me, my belief is that, yes, have tactics, have things that are working, never fall in love with those tactics, never get dependent on those things. But if you are obsessed with knowing your customer, you're always going to know if that tactic stopped working, okay, well, that person still exists. So they put their time and energy somewhere else. Where'd they put it? How do I get in front of them? And so I think I don't even know if that answered your question as much as that's where, so yes, you need to be empathetic with yourself, if that's even the right phrase that we should use, as being empathetic with yourself. But that makes total sense. Is, do you understand yourself and what your core values are truly? And are you actually doing what you preach?
Let's go write a book after you launch your next one.
Let's do it. I hate writing a book, man. I'm trying, but it's hard. I know you've experienced it.
Oh yeah, it's the worst, but it's going to be pretty. It's pretty special to see people get impacted by your message. So okay, so we're going to take anything else that you want to add on this whole empathy driven, because I think, dude, that's profound, and that's at the base of how you live your life and how you run this, and it's super evident, by the way. Like, we met once at a conference, like we spent a couple of days together, but it's super, super evident in the way that you live your life. Like, this is a core.
And relationships are everything.
Yes.
It's everything. I believe that your dream, this is for entrepreneurs, but I believe your dream business is on the other side of genuine, real relationships. Unfortunately, I think that we try to automate and scale ourselves out of the thing that is the most important to us, which is the relationship. And we can go on a whole other tangent another time, and maybe that's another time that we could talk about it. But I believe that we're so fixated on acquisition and so too fixated, we're not fixated enough on retention.
Yeah.
Statistics show that a 5% increase in retention, depending on your industry, can be between a 30 and a 100% increase in profitability, because it's so much more expensive to lose a client and then go replace that client just to get back to break even of where you were at than it is to just keep that client that you already spent all the money acquiring.
Yeah. The same idea as a team member. It's so
employees are so expensive to lose.
Yeah.
That's why people love automation and tools, because you can get rid of people. But at the end of the day, people are what makes me be able to charge $30,000 a month.
100%. Let's talk about this idea of your mastermind concept of having dinner. And And just real quick, because this is something that I'm starting to do, and I'm seeing some really smart people do this.
Yeah.
And I think it's brilliant. I think it's playing the long game. So why don't in 2 minutes or so give the overview of that concept, because I think people like this is a write down moment if you're listening.
This will move the needle for your business, especially in high ticket sales. If relationships are what drives revenue for you, so strategic partnerships, potential clients, brand ambassadors and advocates for your brand. So I travel a lot, and travel is exhausting. It's expensive, but it's necessary in my line of business. And so for me, because I traveled all these big cities all over the world, my goal has become, if I'm going to spend the time and the money to be in that city, why not spend a little bit more time, just a slight bit more time, a slight bit more money, a couple grand, and create an experience in an evening that brings really high-powered people into the same room with me that instantly comes with trust and authority. The moment that you're throwing the party, I think Gary Vee actually talks about this. I think he's mentioned it once or twice. He calls it the high school party rule. Yep. And it's really this whole principle of back in high school, if you weren't a cool kid, but your parents were out of town and you had the open house and you threw the house party and you invited the cool kids, you became the cool kid. Mm-hmm. It's similar principle is when I go to a city that I know I'm going to either visit again or that just has a dense population of people I want to be in front of, throw a party with 12 to 15 people in the room, spend $2 to $3 grand, rent out a really sweet space, which we had a pretty awesome one in Austin. Yeah. Pay for their dinner and have a one-night mastermind, 4 hours, where you're get to know people, you have good drinks, you're breaking bread with one another, but then you're also trying to work on each other's businesses. And it just, when you do that, one, it organically creates opportunity. Yep. And two, it creates the most difficult asset to acquire from other people, which in the currency that I believe is the most expensive to acquire is trust. Mm. And so for me, if I can bring 12 people in a room and gain their trust instantly by being valuable to them in the sense that I'm helping them be a connector, I'm helping them create opportunity. Like you're going to walk away from that night with a couple of potential deals and opportunities just from that one evening. Like that's valuable to me because I'm seeing that happen. That's the definition of being an empathetic, valuable person is I'm not just in it for me, I'm in it for you. And so that's what I do. I think if more people did that, they would see a transformation. But it's expensive, between flights, rental cars, staying the night, dinner, the venue. I mean, it's an extra $3 or $4 grand every time I travel, but the money that comes at the back end just from not even money, but just the currency of trust is so much more valuable to me. And yes, money flows with trust.
Yes, I love that. That's a mic drop moment in itself. Let's talk about your book that's going to be coming out, Scale to Fail. Mm-hmm. I think you touched a little bit on it earlier. You threw some punches at some people in the industry. But listen, talk about the concept of this scale to fail.
Yeah. So the preface in the book is always going to be, I am not anti-scale. I wouldn't say I'm even anti-automation, anti-technology, anti-system and processes. In fact, I think all those things are valuable. It's just inappropriately prioritized in our life. And so I think books like Built to Sell or The E-Myth have 80% amazing principles. They should be applied. They need to be applied. And there's a 20% there, which I think is valuable in the right context. Unfortunately, most of us take it and utilize it in the wrong context. And it's this, everything that can scale should, right? And I totally disagree with that. I don't think that everything should scale because I think that the more that we scale and automate and put technology behind things, the further away we get from relationships. Yep. And the further we get away from relationships, the harder it is to acquire, harder it is to charge more, harder it is to keep clients if you do acquire them. And so I think that unfortunately, Scale to Fail is essentially my anthem that I'm trying to push up against this narrative that everyone's obsessed with, which is we need to scale everything. Yep. And so, no, I don't believe that if you try to scale your business, you will fail. However, I think that if scale is your obsession and it's not people first, it's not relationships first, it's not being an empathetic individual in the marketplace, you will fail. You won't be around for the long haul. Businesses aren't sustainable on technology, period. Yep. Because at the end of the day, something will break.
And I'm sure empathy is going to be at the foundation of the print of what you're going to
100%. Yeah. Exactly.
You know, it's interesting. We've both read Robert Kiyosaki's books,
Mm-hmm.
and when you talked, it went to his concept of, you know, don't work for someone and do business and invest in assets. And by the way, those are good principles. But you and I both know that there's very few people that should be true entrepreneurs, and it's nothing wrong with working for someone or maybe doing a non-typical route. And it goes back to having empathy and self-awareness on what you want.
Right.
And so it's funny, you mentioned, Michael Gerber's book, and I was just thinking, man, like there's so many people that I wish they could like see the big picture, but not just be so literal on certain things. Cause I really think it's hurting our industry. And I think there's people that are failing, losing a lot of money and going through a lot of hurt because they don't know themselves.
Or they have the boom and bust cycle, which boom and bust cycle happens on a micro level with technology and tactics, which is why I always say never fall in love with tactics, because everything has its boom and then it's bust. Google AdWords, back in 2002, you could get things for a 5 cent, cost per click. Now, even if now it can cost you $30 to $130 a click. Yep. And yet people are still spending money there because they fell in love at one point with the fact that it worked, and it's really hurting them today. If they would have moved to Facebook 10 years ago or 8 years ago, they'd experienced the same thing. Now Facebook's starting to fall off a little bit. Now it's LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's the big craze. And if you get attached to LinkedIn, 3 to 5 years from now, it's going to be so saturated. It's already becoming saturated that the effectiveness drops. It's just boom and bust. And the same thing goes with businesses. Is you might have a big boom year, and if you're not prepared and you're not creating sustainability in your business through, in my opinion, relationships and empathy, you will eventually have the bust.
Yep.
And so you might have that lifestyle business you really want, where you're on a beach sipping martinis, but then 2 years later, no one's going to know who you are.
Yep. I love it, man. Really curious to hear your answer to this, as I have a ton of respect for your business and how you've built wealth. Is how do you define better wealth? Like, what does the word better wealth bring to your mind?
Stewardship.
Yep.
I think that, and you and I align on this from a faith perspective, but I think that I think money is a good thing. Mm-hmm. I think that in our world, the Christian world where we come from, sometimes money can be viewed as a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if it's manipulated from its original purpose, which is to be a vehicle for impact. There's nothing wrong with accumulating wealth. And that's the first thing you have to understand. The second thing is, as a Christian, at least for my opinion on how I believe better wealth is, I have to realize it's not mine. Yep. I'm an ambassador for the person who gave it to me, which I believe is God. And so I want to be a good steward of it. If I look at the story in Genesis of Adam and Eve, he gave Adam and Eve 2 commandments. One was to have sex and multiply. That's great. The second is to work the garden. Here's your garden. Here's all the animals, the plants. Subdue it, take care of it, make it more beautiful, and make it flourish, right? I believe that our work is for the purpose of flourishing and making our garden more beautiful than when we received it, to give it back to the person who gave it to us. So in my opinion, my money is part of my garden, right? My goal is to make it flourish and multiply. And I think that ties all the way back into empathy driven. I think that you who solve the greatest problem for the most amount of people have money flowing to you more than anyone else. And so I believe that if I can change the narrative in people's mind to be more empathy driven, I'm solving a big problem.
Yep.
And I've only got a couple of years of use case behind this at this point, but I think that the trends are telling me that I'm solving a big problem and the money is flowing. And, I just want to continue to be a good steward of that. I don't want to ever take it for granted. Yep. I want to realize that, though I'm putting in effort, all the opportunity that comes from me, I'm not self-made. One, there's people around me.
Totally.
But two, I have a creator that's given me these opportunities, these skill sets, the people around me, the abilities. And so, yeah, that's what I would say better wealth means to me.
That's powerful, man. The word that comes to my mind, or the phrase, is value economy. It's if we can provide value, like not only will the things that we want come into play, but like money will flow, because money is just a scorecard, quite frankly, for the value creation that we create in the world for people.
100%. I think so.
For those wondering my political views, that's where my political views lie.
It's true though.
Okay. So, anything else you want to talk about on that front?
No, I mean, I would give you, and you didn't ask me to do this at all, but I think what you are doing is you are educating the market on one, you're not being partial to investment strategies. I think that, obviously you have some that work, but I think one thing that in our conversations, and I've got your book right here, actually, reading through it and looking through infinite banking and stuff like that. Like I believe wholeheartedly that you care deeply about making an impact on folks. And so I want to give you a shout out because I think that you are embodying your name, which is you are a BetterWealth solution, because you're not tied to any tactic and you actually care about the people you serve because you want to help them create more impacts and have more influence and more money to be a vehicle for more impact.
I really appreciate that, man. The last question I end all my podcasts with it's called the legacy question. And it goes like this. This is your last day on earth. You know it for a fact. You're with the people that you love the most, and you're sharing with them one conversation on the things that you've learned and what you want to pass on before you leave. What's that conversation going to look like? And how's that going to go?
That's a great question. I'll probably start it off with, let's go meet Jesus. And then from there, I think if I'm actually teaching a lesson and I actually think about this frequently in the terms of like, if I have the privilege of sitting on my deathbed and reflecting on my life, I hope that I can look back on it and be proud. At that point, it might be too late because we're all going to die. But I think that if I could leave something with them is, I hope you ran the race well. At the end of the day, money is a vehicle, but it is not your identity. Impact as well. Impact is a vehicle. It's not your identity. I think on a more micro level, it's don't productize relationships.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you cannot have impact on people if you do not have a relationship with people. You might be able to in a relationship doesn't mean you have to actually have a conversation with them necessarily. Like I've had authors who've had impacts on me who I've never talked to.
Right.
But I think that they understood me and my problems so much so that they put it into a book that then served me, but they couldn't have done that if they didn't know me, like my type of person. And so, yeah, I would say at that point, it's probably too late to change anything in your life, but I hope that you ran it well and you prioritized people.
Yeah. I love that, man. And you said something, don't productize a relationship. That's a book title in itself.
Yeah, I actually had someone tell me that the other day too, because I like to use that. I use that phrase on my team and they're like, oh, dude, you should write that down. I was like,
yeah.
Cool.
Because I'm telling you, man, and I'll just use us as an example. No agenda on either end. I guarantee you what we're going to be able to do together through our relationship and friendship are going to be far greater than some random person that sees a Facebook ad that comes into one of our funnels. That's the point. It's like no agenda. And yet it's super powerful. So thank you for living that out. I'm going to have your name here. What's the best way for people to connect with you? Thank you. And buy your future book when it comes out. I mean, sure. I want to help you promote that for sure.
Yeah, I'll be done. Actually, my personal brand website is being revamped and right now it's in shambles, but it will be joeygilkey.com. I will have free books on there as well for folks. But outside of that, connect me on LinkedIn between now and then. So it's linkedin.com/in/Joey Gilkey.
I love it, man. Thank you for being such a go-giver. Thank you for leading with empathy in just our relationship. And I am excited to actually implement some of the things that I've learned just in this conversation with you, because we have a message that I think is going to have a tremendous impact. But I want to make sure that the way that we're sharing that message doesn't turn people away and gets people to the heart of what we're really doing. And so thank you, man. I got tremendous value from this interview.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you having me on, man. I really respect what you're doing and love your hustle. And I love your hustle because you're not in it for yourself. You're hustling because you have a bigger why. So thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me have a little piece of, or be a little part of that journey for you. And I look forward to the future.
Thank you so much for listening to the BetterWealth podcast. It would mean the world to me if you could hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this with the people that you know and love.